Hey Marquise, do you got time?
I got time.
That's good. This is episode 4 of I Finally Saw, where today I finally saw The Incredibles.
Dun, 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 dun.
Way to go! Now Disney has copyright claimed the video, and we've lost all our money. What a fantastic start! Welcome everybody to another episode of I Finally Saw. Once again, I am joined here by Andromeda.
Hello, everybody.
And Marquise.
What's up?
And last but not least, we have, I don't know who this is. Some individual in a domino mask. Would you like to introduce yourself? It's Incrediboy.
I'm Incrediboy.
That's great.
This is David the Court.
Actually, Dayton. It's Dayton.
Oh, okay. Oh, you fooled me. You fooled me. That was good. I didn't. Oh man, I didn't see that coming. All right, so top of the show. It's time for us to sort of introduce ourselves to this movie. So, as always, here is a little snippet from Google because I am too lazy to type anything myself. The Incredibles is a 2004 American animated superhero film written and directed by Brad Bird, produced by Pixar Animation Studios for Walt Disney Pictures. Set in a retro-futuristic version of the 1960s, the film follows Bob and Helen Parr, a couple of superheroes known as Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl respectively, who hide their powers in accordance with a government mandate and attempt to live a quiet suburban life with their 3 children. However, Bob's desires to help people draws the family into a confrontation with a vengeful fan turned foe.
What's the toughest thing about being a superhero? Trying to live a normal life.
Here at the top of things, I believe, Andromeda, have you prepared a bit of a history lesson for us?
Yes, I did. And I actually want to start off with a quote that the director Brad Bird had said in the bonus commentary of the DVD. And he said, "The animation genre, it's not a genre. A Western is a genre. Animation is an art form, and it can do any genre." And I love this quote because I think many of us here have the opinion that animation is not for children. And I think it kind of really kicks off the episode to hear that this is an animated movie, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily for kids. So, a little bit more backstory into The Incredibles as a whole is that after the box office flop of Iron Giant, again, writer-director Brad Bird and many staff members on the project actually worked to create the animated movie The Incredibles, which then became a 2005 Oscar animated feature film and sound editing winner. So the technology for Pixar was not very good for humans or hair, hence why there were a lot of movies made about animals at this time. Think movies like Hoodwinked, Chicken Little, Madagascar, which those movies actually came out a year after The Incredibles. But on top of these animation struggles, Incredibles had hundreds of environments to create, from a suburbia, a jungle, the middle of the ocean, cities, a hidden villain's lair, and they had to create technology for other things like fire and water. And I think Pixar has always been on the cutting edge of new technology for the sake of telling story through animation. And for more reference, Shark Tale and Shrek 2 were the Oscar-nominated movies in the 77th Academy Awards from 2004. But Incredibles took home the Oscar, as I personally feel it should have.
So, I want to transition now into a discussion about familiarity with everybody. I'd like to start with Marquise. So prior to prepping for today, how familiar were you with this movie?
I watched it a lot growing up. I absolutely love this movie. I absolutely love superheroes. And yeah, so I kind of grew up with this movie. But again, in preparation for this episode, I watched it for the first time with my film cap on, and it is really such a fantastic movie.
Did you watch it all the way through this time?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd already seen the movie, so you know.
Okay. Dayton, what about you?
Yeah, I grew up with it as well. I watch it a bunch in like the backseat of my mom's car. But yeah, I had like a resurgence of like interest in this movie whenever I played Disney Infinity. Like that came out, like Mr. Incredible.
Oh
one.
yeah.
So I got obsessed with that movie again because of Disney Infinity. But yeah, no, I love this movie. And it's like I think it's one of the best animated movies ever. One of the best movies ever.
And then Andromeda, what about you?
I think like everyone else on the panel, I also grew up with this movie, but I will say that watching it as an adult is just a very different experience because when I was a child, I didn't really understand most of the beginning setup. Like I didn't understand
Yeah.
that the guy wanted to kill himself. I didn't understand that it led to superheroes getting sued and then taxpayers getting mad at them and then the government forcing superheroes into conforming to like a sense of normality, so to speak. And then I
Yeah.
also didn't understand that Bob was an insurance adjuster manipulating the system to like help people like he did with that old woman. So watching it as an adult, I think it made more things make sense. And
Yeah.
I also want to reiterate the point that this is a family movie, not just a kids movie. And like I can just see it with a better appreciation now that I've gotten a better understanding of the world.
So, unlike the rest of the panel, I did not grow up with this movie. I think prior to preparing for today, I had seen this movie once, kind of, in like the backseat of a minivan. And it was like the Spanish dub and the speakers, and it was a horrible viewing experience. So I used to tell people I didn't like this movie because I didn't like the Spanish dub. I didn't have a fantastic viewing experience, and so that was sort of different, I think, because I came into this wholly with my, I guess, adult perspective, and yeah, coming into that was very surprising at times, considering some of the things that this movie tackles.
No matter how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I feel like the maid. I just cleaned up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
Well, then I guess at this point, let's go ahead and transition into our actual sentiments about the movie. I kind of gotten an impression from everybody, but let's get a little bit more in depth. Andromeda, how do you feel overall about this movie?
I still really love this movie, to be honest with you. And it's honestly refreshing watching a movie like this in our current superhero movie landscape, because I think Brad Bird does a great job at humanizing his characters. And we have a lot of other superhero media like this, like The Boys and Invincible, which again feel like outliers because when we think superhero movies, it's usually Marvel and DC, and they just don't get into, I think, like the humility that makes superheroes, you know, like what they are. You know, the beginning of Incredibles has interviews with all of the main heroes, and like Mr. Incredible's talking about settling down, and then Elastigirl's like, settle down, I'm at the top of my game, like I'm not doing that. And again, it just feels like just such an interesting way to start a superhero movie. And whenever I watch superhero movies now, I think I'm kind of in the same headspace of like I don't really want to watch it because it's not really offering anything new to the table.
I definitely agree with Andromeda. Obviously, like I love superhero movies, but like this
Really?
movie does like Andromeda said. Like Andromeda said, this movie does a really good job of humanizing them and like making their life feel relatable. Like Brad Bird had said that he wanted to balance out like the feeling of fantastical versus the feeling of mundane in Bob Parr's life, which is why like you know when at the beginning of the movie it's very colorful, very saturated, like it's supposed to, he said it's supposed to like represent like the golden days, and then after, you know, heroes are forced into like hiding and they have to like lead these normal lives. He makes the color palette so gray and bland, and he takes away all that saturation, all that like dynamic lighting, and he even like crunches the shot. And so I think that's a very good representation of like, wow, like his life is now mundane, and like that's super relatable. Like he wants more out of his life, but he can't really get that anymore. I feel that's a very like relatable topic. I feel like they go over a lot of topics that like not necessarily go over kids' heads, but like kids don't really can grasp. Like there's a scene where like like you can tell Helen is kind of suspecting that he's cheating on her, but like she did like a kid's not really gonna pick up on that, you know what I mean? But it's like it's there, and it's like it's not completely addressed, but it's definitely happening, you know what I mean? And I feel like there's a lot of scenes like that throughout the movie that's just like, wow, that's like a nice visual touch. It's like this movie is so good at storytelling, and I feel like I can make my own breakdown scene by scene of all of that. But yeah, I really do love and enjoy this movie.
I think one of the strongest things about this movie is for sure the screenplay. Some of my favorite scenes and moments in this movie are when there's not even anything necessarily exciting going on. It's just two characters having a conversation. Some of the dialogue, like one of my favorite scenes in this movie, there's a character who has a fantastic name called Rick Dicker, and he's sort of the like government operative that is sort of kind of in charge of managing the superheroes and their new lives. And it's the scene after Bob chucks his boss through so many walls, and they just have this conversation about just like I had to do something. Well, you always say that. And it's like, somebody was in trouble. Somebody's always in trouble. And it always costs us so much taxpayer money. And I'm just like, I could watch like a whole thing about like this, about just this sort of exhaustion with the system between these two characters. And moments like that, there's the argument between Helen and Bob when he comes home. Which is, and also that screenplay just also goes hand in hand with so many wonderful performances in this movie. Well, I mean, there's the very memorable scene with his boss I was bringing up earlier.
Yeah,
where he's like, who's protecting our people? Par.
No, what are your thoughts of the movie?
No, I love
a company. It's like an enormous cult.
Yeah, no, I love that scene for the pure fact it's like, you can like it's not stated in the scene at all, but it's the way that you can tell they've had this conversation so many times, because the boss is giving his speech, and Bob has heard this speech so many times that he's filling it for him, and boss has given this speech so many times he doesn't even realize he's told Bob this speech, because he's surprised, like he's like, oh yeah, that's what I meant to say, when Bob's like, this is what you're saying, and he's almost like kind of surprised by that.
Oh yeah, he corrects him.
Yeah, and it's like this conversation has happened so many times without them like having to tell you that it's happened so many times. You know what I mean? And like there's just writing like that throughout the entire movie, and what makes it like so good.
Yeah, I think the biggest sort of reputational aspect of this movie that I had heard before seeing it was that it was very mature for a sort of general audience, and that I wasn't necessarily fully ready to kind of come to terms with that, where you have, this whole idea about midlife crisis, about affairs, about like superhero genocide, about the morality of preventing someone of their own free will from harming themselves like that, and all this stuff about like taxpayer dollars and trying to find sort of fulfillment in middle age. I'm like, this stuff is so I could imagine so much of this kind of going over my head, and so there's a part of me that's almost like a little upset and a little jealous that I didn't get to grow up with this movie, because I'm like, that would have been such a wonderful experience to have grown up with it, left it in sort of the memory box for a couple of years, and then come back all this time later and sort of get to uncover all this new layers with it. And so yeah, I was really impressed by that. Dayton, I don't think we've touched on your sort of overall thoughts about it. How do you feel about this movie?
I think it's the best script of a movie I've seen, ever watched. I think the script is just so tight. You get so much information that you don't even. It keeps a super fast pace, while the dialogue says something. You also get a bunch of information from how the characters talk. Like Marquise was saying with the insurance scene. My favorite scene is that insurance scene where it's showing every insurance scene is just a great showing of Bob's place of I want to help people still, but he's in a system that's actively hurting him when he tries to help people. And another scene that's great is the scene where it's just Frozone and him in the car, and they're just talking about where the monologuing scene is he starts monologuing.
He's got me right on a silver platter, and he starts monologuing.
What I love about those there's so much setup and delivery in this movie, because there's that scene about Frozone making fun of a villain for monologuing, and then later on in the movie, Syndrome's he starts monologuing and he's wait, you've got me monologuing. It's no, Bob's not gonna get out of this one because Syndrome's not gonna monologue for him. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's so much setup and payoff in this movie that it's just so good. But yeah,
one thing I really want to touch on is the performances are insane. Mm-hmm. It's that fact that I know that they're big actors like Jason Lee and Samuel L. Jackson. Mm-hmm. I still don't think of them as those actors when I'm watching this movie.
There's almost a very sort of naturalistic at times flow to the dialogue. Yeah, it flips off between the sort of very sort of big theatrical sort of tone of voice that you would expect with classic Golden Age superheroes, and then these sort of more grounded, very naturalistic tone of dialogue. I kind of want to touch on the setting a little bit, sort of touching into that retrofuturism from the 50s and 60s, because I think that's sort of an inspired choice. I think I love that sort of Americana mid-century time place for superheroes. There's something to me about them in that time period that just sort of works for me, and I don't know, I have a soft spot for superhero stories that take place around that time. There's a part of me that's it would be interesting to see more sort of maybe characters that we're familiar with put in sort of that context, and I think it also works on the level of that, especially for sort of white suburban Americans, the 50s are sort of this golden period for them, and so I think there's a level of relatability there, where it's just the 50s are this golden period, and then in the 60s and 70s there was a lot of sort of instability, and I imagine that that's something that's very sort of relatable. But yeah, I wish I had the two actors who are the principal actors. I'm trying to remember. Yes, Craig T. Nelson. Craig T. Nelson as Mr. Incredible just kills it, because he has such a wide range that he's got to cover, from almost a sort of Superman-esque hello citizens, to this sort of to sort of the comedic beats, to frustrated, to he's all over the place in this movie, and he always sort of nails it, and as well as sort of his chemistry with Holly Hunter, who plays Mrs. Incredible, I think is really they paint this very charming picture of a relationship that you do kind of want to root for. And yeah, Andromeda brought up earlier the interviews that happen at the top of the movie, and the sort of the irony with that I think is really funny, of just they both end up settling into the exact opposite of what they said they really wanted midway through the movie. And then, of course, I also want to shout out, there's sort of a funny behind-the-scenes story, if I remember. Brad Bird, the director, plays, of course, the eccentric fashion designer Edna Mode, or E, as she's affectionately referred to. And if I remember correctly, which also one of the you could say that about almost any principal character in this movie, but also one of the best performances. You know, if somebody was like, "That's my favorite character in the movie," of course, it's Edna. You know, I aspire to be her in many ways, and
Nuggets.
and
Exactly. I never look back, darling. It distracts from the now.
but I remember there was a behind the scenes story, and I'm not even going to attempt to do Edna's voice because I don't think I could. But there's a behind the scenes story where Brad Bird was sort of, I guess, talking to the casting directors and the vocal directors, saying, "So I have this character, and she's this very eccentric, sort of mid-century, fashion designer. This is sort of the voice I'm thinking of." And he did the voice for them, and they sort of stared at him stupefied, and they were like, "Mr. Bird, I feel like you should probably honestly just do the voice, because I don't know where we're gonna find that."
It was actually, they actually brought the woman in they wanted to get, but
Really?
she said that. She was the one who said it. Yeah,
Really?
it wasn't the casting people.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's yeah. So
She was the designer they based Edna on, I believe.
wow. I also really want to touch on, how do you guys feel about the score?
It's really good. I
I-
like that it takes some spy movies more than superhero stuff.
Yeah.
Which I think is sort of a mid-century side effect, you know. But I think it's appropriate.
I like the score. I like how it like fits in like the time frame almost. Like it doesn't feel super modern. It does feel mid-century, like you said. I like how there's so many there's like the initial theme song, you know what I mean? But then there's so many I guess reprises of it throughout the movie, and to like set different tones. And I just love that.
Yeah, there's even like a really sort of tame, before things really sort of explode, there's like this really tame version of it that's played on like chimes at the very beginning
Yeah,
of the movie.
yeah, and it's like
That's really cool.
yeah. So it's like being creative and like that is, I always appreciate with a score for sure.
It's probably my favorite score from Michael Giacchino.
Yeah.
Is his last name, I think.
Yeah.
The primary composer. He also composed movies like Up.
Right.
I know he's
did.
worked with Brad Bird in the past. Maybe it was Ratatouille.
But
he's done a lot of Disney films.
He's done an insane run as a composer. I think one of the most prolific composers of our time. He did the Spider-Man Home trilogy. He's doing the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out. He did Up.
Yep.
He did
Yep.
Inside Out. He directed and composed Werewolf by Night, which was a little feature presentation
Yup.
for Marvel. He did the music for Rogue One. He was the first non-John Williams composer to work on a Star Wars project like that, if I remember correctly, of that scale. Feature-length project. What an insanely prolific career and immensely hardworking talent. So, and I think this is honestly up there with some of his best work. You know, I would love to put some of these tracks just on in the background as I'm doing things, because it just feels so electric.
That's exactly
and
what I
appropriate.
do. I have a playlist on Spotify called Disney Dinner Party, and this is like
Ooh.
primarily like the music from this movie is primarily what I play. And then whenever I have guests over, they'll listen to it and they're like, "This sounds really familiar. Like, this is really good. What is it?" And I'm like, "It's literally just a soundtrack from Incredibles."
I want to touch on something that really sort of spoke to me about this movie in my own life, and I wish I could remember, but I remember there was someone who sort of talked about this movie and the way this sort of movie touches on dreams and aspirations, and like Mr. Incredible's journey, I think, is really fascinating because I think it's a journey that a lot of people go through. Of when you're younger, you really, and we're sort of in that stage of our lives now where we have a lot of aspirations and a lot of things that we want to achieve, and we're maybe sort of defined by the things that we do and as sort of by choice and our hobbies like that. And I wish I could remember his name, but he compartmentalized it in a fascinating way where he was this guy who like really wanted to be a basketball player, and that was the first thing he sort of defined himself as, is he really wanted to be a basketball player, and it just didn't pan out for a number of reasons. And for a lot of his sort of middle to late, like sort of middle adulthood, he sort of was reconciling with the fact that he was identifying himself like that. And there's a line in the movie that I find really apt to that, where she's like, that was, that happened then, but you're not focusing on what's happening now. Our family is now. And I think sometimes when we sort of define ourselves by these things and then they pass us by, I think we run the risk of feeling like we've betrayed ourselves, like somehow we're not truly being authentic to who we are, that we've somehow disappointed ourselves in some way, shape, or form. And that's something I've sort of tried to reconcile with, this idea that, like, I'm not a movie guy. I am a guy who likes movies. And, I want to give my best effort to make art and to put stuff out into the world. But if, 20, 30 years down the line, I've found something, whether that's starting a family or I don't know what else, that matters and is happening now and is important, if that becomes my number one priority, that doesn't mean that I've betrayed who I am. And I can't constantly get hung up on this idea of who I thought I need to be to stop myself from becoming what I'm supposed to. And I find that very inspiring and very comforting, especially right now when I think there's a lot of sort of anxiety for people my age about, like, what am I supposed to do with my life? And to be like, this is something I like, and if you have something you like and you want to pursue it and you want to pursue your best foot forward, go for it. But that if it doesn't pan out, it doesn't mean that it's like a cosmic failure on your part. That sometimes things don't necessarily pan out, and something just as good, if not better, can also sort of come along. So to don't sort of stop yourself from achieving that. And so that has been really personally resonant, of just like, yeah, like if 15 years down the line, if for whatever reason in my life I don't really go to the theater anymore and I'm not super into movies as much anymore, that doesn't mean that I've betrayed who I am, and that also doesn't mean that the time that we've invested here was a waste of time. It can still be meaningful. Those glory days can still be meaningful and sentimental, but also, don't deprive yourself of what's going on right now. And I thought that was really sort of beautiful.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to reframe the theme you have of more so like, was Syndrome right? And I think the question Syndrome poses is just what makes him a very compelling villain to begin with. Like, if everyone is super, then no one is. And he's asking, like, the movie itself asks the question, should we be the best versions of ourselves, or should we all conform into a mold set by society? And he brings it up in, when I say he, I mean director Bird brings up in other movies like Ratatouille, and the message of anyone can cook. And with Incredibles specifically, you have all of the characters trying to fit so hard into normality. Like, when Helen is telling the kids, like, no, don't use your powers, because, like, while you are special, we still have to be like everyone else. But then when they're out in the field and, like, they're on the airplane, and Helen is like, Violet, I need you to put a force field around the plane right now. Violet can't do it because she doesn't know the extent of her power. Like, she's cracking under pressure. She's never had to do this. And especially for your mom to all of a sudden be like, you have to save us. Like, we are going to die if you don't do this.
I need you to lock in.
Yeah. It is so hard to... I don't even know how to verbalize it, but again, it just asks the question of at what point can we be the best versions of ourselves, but also kind of water it down to allow, like, other people to kind of rise to the occasion and be, like, I don't know. I feel like some people just don't have some talents in this regard, right? Or even if they don't seemingly have talents, it's just not in a conventional way per se. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like that even ties back to the illusion that you made later on with Ratatouille, where it's like it's not that everybody has the capacity to become a great cook, but that a great cook can come from anywhere.
I think the biggest theme in this movie for me is family.
Family. Mia Familia.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think the biggest theme in this movie for me is family, and it's like it's kind of like reinforced throughout the entire movie, but it's like, it even essentially almost causes the main problem of this movie. But like when Incredible Boy tries to like team up with Mr. Incredible, he's like, no, I work alone, and so like there's just this theme of Mr. Incredible trying to carry the weight of the world on himself because he doesn't want he doesn't want help. He doesn't think he needs the help. He wants to be able to do it alone. And so there's this like running theme throughout the movie where like he denies Incredible Boy. He doesn't tell his wife about like he doesn't tell his wife that he lost his job. He doesn't tell his wife about going to this island and like and fighting this robot. Like he doesn't want anyone to have to like worry about that. And so when it finally comes to like the climax of the movie, they come back from the island and they're in the RV and he's telling the kids to like stay there, and she's like, no, I'm gonna help you. He's like, no, I work alone. And she's like, why do you feel the need, like why do you have to work alone? And he's like, because I'm not strong enough, and like I need to be strong enough for you guys. And she's like, no, like if we all work together, we can help lift that load. And that's what he finally like realizes, that like teamwork and family is important to your success, essentially. And I found that really touching.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
For real.
Mr. Incredible's like lesson kind of is heavily tied with his power too. It's just like that he has super strength because he is trying to be like the protector, the guy who's trying to help his support his family.
And I believe Brad Bird has sort of talked about that. All of the family's powers were sort of inspired by typical family dynamics, where it's like fathers are sort of expected to sort of, shoulder the weight of everything, and mothers are expected to be in a million places at once, and so she's super stretchy because she's got to always like be multitasking, and then 10-year-old boys are always bouncing off the wall, so he's got super speed, and oftentimes teenagers want nothing more than to not be perceived, and so she can make her and to protect herself, and so she can make force fields and make herself invisible, and that's a touch that I really sort of appreciate. And then we always think of babies as thinking they have the capacity for anything, and so he's a shapeshifter, he's a jack of all trades, and I thought that's one of my favorite little details about the movie. Another thing that I was surprised to find out is that Frozone's wife, her name is actually Honey.
Yeah. Because at the dinner table.
Yeah, I always thought that like that was just a nickname, because I've heard people quote that scene before.
Yeah. But yeah, no. At the dinner table where Frozone comes to pick up Bob for bowling night, Helen's like, "Tell Honey I said hi."
Yeah.
And I caught that last night for the first time too. I thought that was funny.
This is entirely unrelated, but I have to bring up this story. That one time I went to the movie theater with Marquise, and Marquise was leading the pack into the theater, and we were like 30 minutes early. It was like a half hour before even the trailers were supposed to start, so they weren't even playing like anything, like not even the pre-roll ads. And Marquise thought the theater was going to be empty, and so he marches on in there into the empty movie theater and loudly proclaims, "Where's my super suit?" At which point, this lone old man sitting in the handicap row just like cracks his neck and stares at him. And we all just awkwardly slink away about 7 rows behind that guy and hope we never see him again. So, yeah. We were just like, Marquise,
Wasn't
why?
this during Cinderella's Revenge?
There
Yeah,
might
I
have
thought-
been.
yeah,
He
it's-
left the movie anyway.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that guy
yeah.
left the movie anyway. Yeah, because you upset him so much because you keep shouting at the elderly.
What?
That guy.
No, he left because that movie was terrible.
Well, you know, I guess we'll never know.
That's one thing I love about Helen in general. She's like such a bad woman. I think
Yeah.
most of the women in Incredibles are, to be honest with you.
You
Like,
are
I
a
love that
Elastigirl.
Helen was exactly. She's amazing. She can do all of these things. She's literally a pilot, and even Holly Hunter, the Helen's voice actor, was like, I need to learn how to do proper pilot talk so that when I go like perform the scene of Helen flying the plane, it's
Mhm.
gonna be more realistic. So when she says like India Golf 909 are transmitting in the blind guard, she knows that in NATO it means IG99, which is the plane call sign, and she's transmitting to a frequency where anyone in the area can call her, so anyone in the area can hear her, so they hear her distress call.
Mhm.
And like she uses other terminology that I
Yeah.
don't understand, but it's all as accurate as it can be to
Yeah.
that situation.
Can I say something?
yeah.
I have a confession to make, everybody.
Yeah.
I had already seen the sequel. So for most of my life, I had seen Incredibles 2, but not The Incredibles. And
Mhm.
Dayton's so upset he's leaving. He's leaving. Dayton has just left.
Dayton will not stand for this injustice.
He's marching on out of here. No, but I mean, I think of most of the movies that we've seen so far. This is probably Marquise, are you okay? He's dying hysterically. Of the most of the movies that we've seen, this might have been the one that I think, seeing it for the first time now, has most lived up to the hype. You know, I can see why this movie is such a like lifelong obsession and passion for people, because it's just good in every aspect. I think it's really well edited. It's so tightly paced. The soundtrack is amazing. The performances are phenomenal. The animation is really good. I think it still holds up at times, even though you can kind of clearly tell it's from the 2000s. I love the editing in this movie. One of my favorite scenes that sort of showcases it is the scene in Project where he's uncovering Project Kronos. And so you're having this sort of flip-flop back and forth between Bob uncovering this horrible truth and Helen uncovering this horrible truth. And with the way the music is building, I mean, I think there's a reason that I've seen that song pop up so many like videos online that have nothing to do with the movie, because it's just it perfectly encapsulates that feeling of just like slowly uncovering this horrible truth. And I think like I said, I think of the movies we've seen so far that I am experiencing for the first time on the show, I think this is probably the one that I feel like I'm prepared to say has most lived up to the hype.
I really want to talk about more of the details of this movie because it is just packed to the brim
Yeah.
with stuff. Like, I think the very beginning setup, right? Buddy is wanting to work with Mr. Incredible, and he's wearing a cape. And then Bon Voyage, last second, puts a bomb on his cape.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Incredible's like, yo, you need to stop right now so I can get this off of you. And that kind of alludes, or I would say more so, it
It sets up.
foreshadows
Yeah.
his death. Yeah. And then it sets it up kind of again when Edna's like, no capes.
No
So
cape.
many superheroes have died
Yeah.
because of the capes. So I just love that, those small details of this. Like, again, I could name so many small things,
Yeah.
but that one I think is like the best example of foreshadowing so early on in the movie.
There was another thing kind of like related to that scene is like Syndrome remembering like Bob saying like,
Oh,
go
yeah.
fly home, buddy. I work alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember. He just completely removes Bon Voyage from the situation and
Yeah.
just like shows how like kind of selfish he is, and just
Mhm.
he doesn't realize the importance of what like Mr. Incredible does. He just
Yeah.
sees it as like, oh, he's a big grand guy. I want to be like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of like split on the whole syndrome thing because I feel like even as a kid, Syndrome was incredibly talented, like a very incredibly talented individual. Like he made freaking flying shoes. You know what I mean? So, like I guess he was like 11, 12 ish. I don't know, but part of me wonders if Bob had like decided to like give him attention and like be like, okay, yeah, like you can be my sidekick, but here are the rules. Here's what we're gonna do. Like that situation possibly could have been avoided almost. I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bob even sort of takes some accountability because when they reunite, he's like, "I was wrong to treat you that way."
But maybe that's him like. To me, that almost feels like just him like groveling and trying to like
maybe.
Yeah, like disengage the situation almost.
I don't think that Syndrome being taken under his wing would have been good for him because I feel like he would have trying to like. I feel like his like nature is just very egotistical. He doesn't truly care about people. He would have gotten people killed as a superhero. It would have been like, and he wouldn't have been like Bob. Where he would have probably like Bob was pretty much depicted in the court scenes. I was like, I really fucked up with all these people. It's like, well, he did yell at him like, I saved you, but I think Syndrome would have been more violent about it and like would have like hurt people who would like said like you like did something like you might have saved me, but like ultimately I'm like a wreck right now.
I actually disagree. I still feel like Bob had always tried his best to save people, even when he was working in insurance. He's like, look, I can't tell you this, but maybe do this. Like, he never got fired from his job is the thing. Like, he was doing just enough. Like, he did the absolute most he could to help anyone who could. That's why, like, he told the woman, don't go upstairs, don't talk to this person, don't fill out this form.
I'm talking about Syndrome. I don't think it would have been good for him. Because I think Syndrome would have taken it. Like, he wouldn't have been a Robin. He would have been like a person. He would try to like any chance he could.
I think
he
was too sort of caught up in the theatrics. He had a very, I think, immature, misguided idea of being a superhero, where he was like, "I know all your crime-fighting catchphrases and poses and moves," and it's like, it's about rescuing people. You know, not the branding.
Yeah, but see, on that part, I feel like Bob isn't more in it for the sake of people. Like, obviously, like he values life and he enjoys saving people, but I feel like he does it more for the thrill of it and the recognition, and not necessarily in the way that like he really cares about being a superhero. Like in the same sense like Superman cares about being a superhero. I think Bob does it way more for like the glory of it and the attention of it. If that makes
I disagree. I think that he's done like him sneaking out shows that he doesn't care too much about the attention. It is the thrill.
Yeah, it's the thrill of it and the attention, but not necessarily the I want to be good. I want to make the difference. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting about his character.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree, but I mean, like, he's still, even in the insurance job, like, there's no thrill or attention, and even then, he's still sort of like, so I think there is some basic decency there. I think I do also want to say, is this the Pixar movie with the highest death toll?
Probably.
The only other one I can think of is Finding Nemo.
Yeah, with all the fish.
Did The Incredibles kill people?
Yeah, there's
Bob doesn't have Bob doesn't have a no-kill rule. You know what I mean?
That's true. I mean, I was just saying, like, Ash, like they caused deaths. I don't know if they killed.
There's all
people
those. There's all those guys that like had their vehicles explode. I feel like they probably died. There's all of the dead superheroes. There's. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Wait, remember that scene where like Bob was on the island sneaking into the lair? Essentially, he picked up the rock and then like threw it at the guard.
Oh yeah, and he fell.
Oh yeah,
that guy's dead.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
Well,
no way
punch-
he's surviving that.
Syndrome.
Yeah, a punch
died.
from Bob probably also kills you.
Um,
Yeah, Syndrome died.
all the superheroes with the capes
Well-
died.
Arguably, that was from his cape, though. That wasn't from Bob.
No, that's what I'm saying.
but
Like, just
honestly-
this movie, I think is the Pixar movie
You
with
just
the
mean in
most amount of
general.
people that just die in the movie.
Yeah, probably.
What's
Why do you need to know?
I don't think so.
Your sword can stretch as far as your sword.
All right. I think it's time to sort of start wrapping it up now. So let's pose the question that I feel like I can kind of guess the answer to. Would you all recommend this movie to people? Dayton, would you recommend The Incredibles to people?
This is the first ever yes I've given on the show.
Wow. Wow. Marquise, what about you?
This is my first no strings attached. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You should watch this movie. You need to. If you have not seen this movie yet, go as soon as this podcast
my
is
goodness.
done, and after you watch the bonus
goodness.
episode, go watch it immediately. Immediately.
First he was yelling
Yeah,
at the
let's post
elderly,
them.
now he's yelling at our audience. Somebody help. Help!
All right.
All right, Andromeda, what about you?
Yes, I would absolutely recommend that everyone watch this movie. There are so many great things about it, from storytelling standpoints, acting. Like, we could uncover probably hours more content just from this movie alone. Even like just one scene. So, like, take it upon yourself to do due diligence and watch this movie.
Mhm.
Stay tuned for the video essay.
Oh boy. Well, I think, obviously the movie is brilliant. So, I would have to say, I would not recommend this movie to anybody. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it's good. It's fantastic. Oh, I wish there was some sort of.
It's incredible.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty good. I wish I thought of that. Man.
We're superheroes. What could happen?
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I love you all, and good night. Dayton's hitting the super pose. That's great.